Thank you ever so much for John. Thanks to John, rather, for just letting me just have quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. Oh yeah, just one. We were talking yesterday evening about birds, and I moved on to the end of the talk. I ended the talk talking about birds. And there's a lovely verse which says this: "Hast thou an arm like God, or canst thou thunder with a voice like him? Deck thyself now with majesty and excellency, and array thyself with glory and beauty." There is just a wonder in birds, which, of course, I was talking about last night. There is just a glory in birds. But do you realize that there is a glory in insects, flying insects as well? There is actually a glory in insects as well. But as a whole, dung beetles, not least. But I just want to talk about some of the flying insects in this time that I've just been given to close with this afternoon. So I'm not going to keep you very long, just to let you have a little bit of a extra, which will close off what I was saying last night. It's amazing when you consider butterflies, because the butterflies are not made of feathers, as of course you know. The wings are made of scales, and they come out of a chrysalis, which raises the whole issue, the technical term is, of metamorphosis. That is, you've got two body plans. Now, I think this is one of the other examples of God appearing to almost anticipate that there would be evolutionists coming along, trying to argue that these creatures have evolved. He said, I'll give them a real problem. What I'll do is I'll make a creature which starts off as something else, which doesn't have the ability to reproduce. That's important, that point. And changes into a second creature which does have the ability to reproduce, but doesn't reproduce the second one, but reproduces the first one. Now that creates a real conundrum. Now, people have argued with me and said, oh, no, we are finding the answer, but they've never given me any detail as regards what is the answer to metamorphosis. Do you get the point? Because you can't possibly evolve this, can you? Because if you've got two body plans, there's got to be a moment when the creature which had one body plan was changing into a creature which has two body plans, and the second creature lays the eggs for the first people. There's no way you can do it, because you can't actually propagate the in-between creature because you haven't got the second body plan which lays the eggs. So metamorphosis, which is the technical term for this two-body plan issue, is actually a huge problem. And I'll tell you something, when you actually look at these wonderful examples of butterflies in this instance, or moths, here's an example, by the way, of glass-wing moth, where you can actually see through the wings. They're very, very small. I had some in a hothouse we have in England, where you could actually see them, and they're tiny. I took a picture myself of them. But look, here's a fossil of a butterfly, or a moth in this case, because you can actually see the little appendages at the end of the antenna. They're identifiable as, guess what, moths or butterflies. And that's one which is actually found in the Albany State Museum, upstate New York, about 150 miles north of New York City. You come to Albany, and I actually took that picture. It's right in the hallway of the Albany State Museum. There's very few fossilized butterflies. It must be worth $1 million. But they are really very, very valuable fossils. But the point I'm making is that they are recognizable as moths and butterflies. So these wonderful glass-wing moths, and then you've got the swallowtails, you've got tiger swallowtail butterfly. Do you know, the way these creatures fly, though, is also remarkable. They have, just like the hummingbirds, the ability to actually manipulate vortices. This is actually taken from underneath. So it's talking about the upstroke of the wings, and as the wings go up, they actually create a vortex. The other point, though, about the aerodynamics of butterflies is that they also have what's called a clap and fling principle. As the wings hit the top, well, they don't quite hit, but once they come together, they then peel away, and as they peel away, there is a vortex formed which increases the lift. So butterflies, when they flutter across your garden, and we do get butterflies, we do, by the way, do have a bit of summer sometimes in England, and the butterflies, as they're fluttering across, you think, oh, you know, they're just so fragile. They're actually not as fragile as you might think. They can fly great distances. And remember this important point that I said, that of course that butterflies and moths, they start off not as butterflies, they start off, as all the children know here, they start off as caterpillars. So when a moth or a butterfly is emerging from a chrysalis, which is what you form, of course, after the caterpillar is eaten so much that he's got so gorged with food, he stops eating and he hangs himself from a little branch, so we got him up the upside down, so we better turn him the right way up. And there he is, hanging from some sort of branch, and out comes a beautiful moth or butterfly. Let's now talk about another creature, and that's the dragonfly. The dragonfly is a marvel. Oh, by the way, I should have just said something else. Just while we're just on butterflies, I think I've just got a moment to do this. Let me just say one other point about butterflies, and that is that they migrate. I should have said that. They migrate, and some people think, and it does seem to be the case, that they actually are also sensing the magnetic field. The famous one, of course, is butterflies called the monarch, migrate from Mexico all the way up through different sides of the United States. And it was only found, I think, about 15, 20 years ago, the actual valley in Mexico, where all these butterflies congregate during the winter. But the amazing thing is that it takes 3 or 4 generations for the butterflies to migrate northwards. So great-granddad, eventually sort of peters out, and comes to the end of his life, then lays eggs for a caterpillar, and those caterpillars of dad, lead to the butterfly, which then makes the journey a bit further on. And it takes 3 or 4 generations for them to finally get to the northernmost part, and then they start going back again. Maybe 1, possibly 2 generations to go back. So it's really quite amazing that insects can migrate so far and can migrate over huge distances. We have them migrating through, it's the monarch, of course, that we're talking about here. They can migrate through, other butterflies migrate through England and Iceland. So it's not just a phenomenon found in the United States. I don't know much about the southern hemisphere ones, but I'm sure that you also have some butterflies which migrate in the southern antipodes. So let me just talk just a bit about dragonflies. Now, these are amazing. Dragonflies have 4 wings which act independently, unlike the butterfly, which has 2 wings on each side which are operating together. Now, the way these operate is actually quite extraordinary, because what they do is they have 2 forward wings which are actually quite different to the hind wings. And this picture shows it very well. A friend of mine from California took this. He's got some lovely pictures, Robert Jensen. And he took this amazing picture showing the forward wings, right, which are being flapped at a different phase to the hind wing. So as the forward wing is going up, the back wing is going down. So if this is the side of the dragonfly, it's this motion which is happening. But that's not all. There is also another motion which is happening, which is what we call supination and pronation, right? It's just a technical term, meaning that the wing is actually twisting. So as the wing goes up, this leading edge, the dragonfly is going in that direction, The leading edge is doing this, and that's supination. Down again, and that's pronation. So it's a twisting, a bit like what I was saying about the hummingbird, right? And this wing, doing it out of phase like this, okay? So what's happening is that it's a bit like a biplane, effectively, although it's not entirely the same because this wing is behind the other wing. But you'll notice that actually when you look at a biplane's wings, they are slightly... Anyway, so this back wing is actually picking up the vortex from the first wing, right? And so it's actually doing less work than it would have done on its own. So it's actually making great use of everything here in order to get as much air across its wings and to get as much lift as it can. Now, if you watch a dragonfly going across a lake, it can go at incredible speed. It's only, today, they're only about 3 or 4 inches, but they dart at an enormous speed. And it's very difficult to catch them with your camera. Although I have done it in one case in England. But I have taken a picture, this is my own picture, of a damselfly, which is a related creature, but has a bit of a difference. Because dragonflies usually just fly straight and catch their prey on the wing as they're moving. Damselflies are rather smaller, as the name suggests. You know, with the word damsel, it suggests a ladylike fly. It's not very ladylike at all, actually, because they are just as carnivorous as their cousins, the dragonfly. They're thinner in body, and they also go through a metamorphosis process. This is a picture I took in Canada where I actually happened to just catch on the picture the thing that they come out of. Unlike butterflies, dragonflies and damselflies start where? Anybody know? In the water. Oh, you've got an even bigger problem now. Because unlike caterpillars, which are still breathing in air, nymphs are breathing in water. Now, this presents a massive problem for an evolutionary scenario. Because you've got the first creature, right, doesn't lay eggs again. It's the second creature which lays the eggs. The damselfly or the dragonfly lays eggs very close to the water, and the water... The eggs go into the water, and the egg then hatches and becomes a nymph. And it's a very voracious creature. It eats tadpoles, it eats all sorts of things, and it gets bigger and bigger until finally it comes out of the water. So what I'm going to actually show you is a little clip from a film. Can we have the sound? Can we make sure that we got the sound? Oops, I've got the same problem as yesterday. I forgot to put the... Macs do sometimes make mistakes. I'm the Macs making the mistake, not the computer. Oh, no, these computers never make mistakes. Right? You don't think I'm advertising, do you?
The river has also been the
I want you to watch
home
this.
of another kind of insect with an equally ancient ancestry, and it too is
Sound
beginning
up a
to
bit.
emerge from the water. Bigger and more ferocious than the mayfly larvae, it has been feeding on tadpoles and even small fish.
This is the nymph.
But that phase of its life is over. Now each one has to haul itself out of the water and into the air. On the top of its thorax, it carries a bulging backpack.
Now watch this. This is amazing.
It hunches itself and its outer skin splits. A very different creature begins to appear.
Watch these.
White threads are drawn out of its flanks. They are the linings of thin tubes that penetrate deep into its body, air tubes that will enable the insect to breathe now that it is out of water. It gulps air, inflating its body, forcing fluid into the bundle on its back. Its wings begin to unfurl. 10 minutes later, the wings open. They'll never close again.
He's right on that. They'll never close. They always die with their wings open eventually.
Next, the huge muscles within its thorax must be exercised to prepare them for action. And it's away.
Now watch this bit.
Dragonflies, like mayflies, belong to the most ancient group of insects that flew over the land. And here in the museum in Harvard, there are fossils of them that are 150 million years old.
That's what he thinks. But now look, see what he says.
They're almost identical
Did you
with
hear him say
species that are still flying today.
No change.
However, they're by no means the oldest. We know that there were other dragonflies even earlier, 225 million years ago, that were flying through the coal measure swamps. We don't have complete specimens of any of those, but there are some tantalizing and amazing fragments. And here's one.
Now, this is an amazing fossil. I'd love to have this one.
This marvelously preserved wing has very much the same pattern of veins supporting panels of membrane as living species. The thing that makes it different is its size. From base to tip, it measures 12 inches, 30 centimeters. Little imagination is needed to replace the membrane that must have been there. This insect must have had a wingspan as big as a seagull's.
Well, we'll leave the little model that he's trying to build there, but you see the point that has come out from that little video. He actually shows that video, that really damselflies and dragonflies are just the same in the fossil record. Essentially, there may be some extinct species that we don't have anymore, but essentially they're still recognizable. And what it really shows to you also is that it must have been catastrophe which must have buried those ones that he was showing. He also showed you the last fossil where the size was immense. So we know that in the past there were giant dragonflies. I find it stunning. The evidence speaks volumes. He was trying to put an evolutionary interpretation, but the actual evidence strongly showed A, catastrophe, and B, that the creatures hadn't been evolving. They were recognizable as dragonflies and damselflies in the fossil record. So actually everything confirms what we know to be true concerning creation and, of course, the flood. The last thing I just want to draw to your attention is that those damselflies and dragonflies are really showing, just as the Bible says, that they were made on day 5, like all the other creatures on day 5, the fish and the flying creatures, but they really show the glory of God. Did you notice in the fluttering on that video that each of those wings operates independently? It's not like butterflies where the wings are operating together. And Sikorsky is reckoned to have looked at these little creatures, the damselflies and the dragonflies, and got his idea of the helicopter. And some people regard the damselfly in particular as God's mini helicopter. And there's many people who've been looking at these creatures with a view to using them for unmanned aerial vehicles in order to copy what they're doing, in order to make little man-made helicopters based on the dragonfly and the damselfly, in order to get into places where maybe for military purposes, sometimes the idea of perhaps going into a disused place or a place which has had a fire where it's dangerous for somebody to go into as a fireman for investigation or whatever, and they use these flying robots. So I would suggest to you that everything is showing, both in birds and in flying insects, brilliant engineering, brilliant engineering by the brilliant engineer, which confirms verse 3 of John 1, without him was not anything made that was made. Also true of the wonderful dragonfly as well. Confirms that verse. Can we have the sound? We seem to have lost it. The sound should be on. The invisible things of him are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Psalm 145 says, all thy works shall praise thee, O Lord, and thy saints shall bless thee. By him were all things created, that are in heaven, that are in earth, visible and invisible. He is before all things, and by him all things consist. So we have reason to give glory to the God who has made even the smallest creatures, as well as the great big eagles that I showed you last night. May God be praised. Amen. Don't forget my DVD is for sale there. They're gradually going, but please feel free to come and buy them there. I think they'll be a bit more expensive to order from the website, so now's the time to buy.
Thank you.